If truth is present everywhere, why does it remain unseen by most people? At first glance, this question appears contradictory. We usually assume that what is true, real, or fundamental must be difficult to find. Depth, in modern thinking, is associated with complexity, distance, or rarity. Something that is immediately present, familiar, or constant is rarely considered profound. It is often dismissed as obvious and therefore insignificant. Yet this assumption creates a paradox. If truth is universal, if it underlies all experience, then it cannot be hidden in distant places or rare moments. It must already be present. And if it is present, then the reason it is not recognized cannot be concealment. It must be something else. The central claim explored in this lecture is simple but unsettling. Human beings do not fail to perceive truth because it is hidden. They fail because it is too obvious. The obvious functions as a veil, not because it blocks reality, but because cognition systematically ignores what does not demand effort or novelty. This is not mystical symbolism or poetic exaggeration. It is a rigorous epistemological and psychological analysis, articulated with remarkable precision by Ibn Arabi. To understand why the obvious becomes invisible, it is necessary to examine the modern psychological environment. Contemporary minds operate under conditions of chronic stimulation. Information is constant. Attention is fragmented. Abstract systems, ideologies, identities, narratives, and conceptual frameworks dominate how people relate to reality. As a result, cognition becomes increasingly outward-oriented and novelty-driven. From cognitive science, several mechanisms explain this condition. Attention bias causes the mind to prioritize what is new, emotionally charged, or unpredictable. Habituation reduces sensitivity to stimuli that remain constant over time. Predictive processing, a dominant model in neuroscience, shows that the brain actively filters out what it expects in order to conserve energy. The practical consequence is subtle but profound. The mind continuously scans for what is new, complex, or stimulating. What is stable, constant, and foundational, such as awareness itself, fades into the background. It is not denied. It is simply ignored. This creates a paradox. Humans search endlessly for meaning, purpose, and truth, often through increasingly elaborate systems, while standing directly on top of what they seek. Ibn Arabi identifies this blindness not as ignorance or lack of intelligence, but as a structural feature of perception itself. Ibn Arabi is often mischaracterized as a mystical poet concerned with hidden symbols and metaphors. In reality, he is a metaphysician deeply concerned with how knowledge itself operates. His work does not obscure reality. It interrogates the mechanisms by which reality is known or overlooked. At the center of his epistemology is a precise claim. Reality is continuously present, but perception is selective, filtered, and biased. The human mind does not encounter the world directly. It encounters models, expectations, and interpretations constructed through attention. According to Ibn Arabi, seekers assume that truth must be hidden because they do not see it. What they fail to examine is the structure of attention itself. They never question whether the problem lies not in reality, but in the way cognition is oriented toward it. This insight anticipates modern developments in cognitive psychology, neuroscience of perception, and phenomenology. Long before these disciplines existed, Ibn Arabi articulated a core idea they now confirm. Perception is not neutral. It is shaped by habit, expectation, and identity. The veil, therefore, is not darkness or ignorance. The veil is familiarity. The first of Ibn Arabi's central teachings concerns familiarity. What is constantly present becomes cognitively backgrounded. Existence itself is self-evident. Awareness is continuous. Being does not arrive in moments. It is the condition of all moments. And precisely because it is uninterrupted, it is overlooked in psychological terms. This corresponds to the habituation effect. Stimuli that remain constant lose salience. Breathing, gravity, bodily posture, and background sounds are rarely noticed unless they change or malfunction. Their constancy renders them invisible to attention. The same applies to more fundamental dimensions of experience. People search for purpose, meaning, or fulfillment, while ignoring the fact that they are conscious at all. The question of what it means to be aware is bypassed because awareness itself never announces its presence. Philosophically, this leads to a crucial conclusion. Truth does not disappear. Attention withdraws from it. The most foundational realities are least noticed, not because they are subtle, but because they are uninterrupted. A second veil emerges from the modern equation of effort with value. There is a widespread assumption that what requires effort must be more meaningful. Complexity is equated with depth. Difficulty is treated as a sign of importance. What comes easily is assumed to be shallow. Ibn Arabi directly challenges this assumption. He argues that difficulty is not a reliable indicator of truth. More often, difficulty reflects mental resistance. The mind struggling against something that destabilizes its habitual structures. Psychology supports this view. The cognitive effort heuristic shows that people tend to assign greater value to ideas that require effort to understand. Cognitive dissonance further increases attachment to complex systems, because abandoning them would threaten the self that invested in them as a result. Elaborate belief systems feel deep, while simple awareness feels empty or unimpressive. The mind prefers constructions it can struggle with, because struggle reinforces identity. There is a role to play, progress to claim, and status to defend. The obvious, by contrast, offers no role, no conquest, and no ownership. It threatens the ego precisely because it does not need it. A third key teaching in Ibn Arabi's thought concerns the nature of knowledge itself. Modern education treats knowing as acquisition, accumulating information, concepts, and explanations. Ibn Arabi reverses this model. For him, knowledge is primarily recognition, not the addition of new content, but the removal of misperception. Truth is not imported into the mind. It is unveiled by dissolving false assumptions. From a neuroscientific perspective, this aligns with perceptual inference. The brain does not passively receive reality. It actively updates internal models. Insight occurs not when new data is added, but when an outdated model collapses. A common example illustrates this. When you realize a long-held assumption was unnecessary, nothing new is gained. Something false is dropped. Clarity emerges through subtraction. The implication is significant. Learning, at its deepest level, is often subtractive rather than additive. The veil is not what covers reality. The veil is what we insist on adding to it. The final veil identified by Ibn Arabi concerns the ego's relationship to obscurity. Identity requires distance from truth. If truth is already present and accessible, the ego loses its central role as seeker, knower, or possessor. Complexity sustains separation, and separation sustains identity. Psychologically, this corresponds to identity-protective cognition and narrative self-maintenance. People unconsciously favor interpretations that preserve their sense of self. The story of "I am seeking truth" feels meaningful. The statement "truth is already present" feels threatening. This creates a paradox. The seeker unconsciously avoids arrival. Obscurity becomes safer than clarity, because clarity dissolves hierarchy. There is no elite, no expert, no special status remaining. Obviousness equals, and for the ego, that is intolerable. At this point, a clarification is necessary. Obvious does not mean trivial. It means dramatic. The deepest difficulty lies in a structural paradox. Awareness cannot easily objectify itself. You can observe thoughts, emotions, and sensations, but awareness is what allows observation to occur. As a result, it is bypassed. Phenomenology articulates this clearly. The conditions of experience are not themselves experienced as objects. Ibn Arabi expresses the same insight metaphysically. The real is not hidden behind phenomena. It is what allows phenomena to appear at all. The obvious is not shallow. It is structurally prior. Translating this insight into modern practice does not require new beliefs. It requires new modes of attention, practically. This involves attentional stabilization, awareness of background, experience, and reduction of compulsive meaning seeking. These principles align closely with mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, metacognitive awareness, and emotional regulation research. Instead of chasing explanations, attention is redirected toward the fact of awareness itself. Instead of accumulating interpretations, unnecessary ones are allowed to fall away. The shift is subtle but radical, from acquisition to recognition, from effort to clarity. The central insight of this lecture is straightforward. Truth is not hidden. It is ignored. Ibn Arabi's contribution lies in revealing that the veil is not darkness or mystery. The veil is what feels too simple to pursue. Complexity often protects the self. Simplicity dissolves it. When attention stops searching for what is distant, rare, or dramatic, the obvious reveals itself, not as trivial, but as the most demanding truth of all.